One thing I've always been kind of wondered about is, what if Trevor never found out Michael was actually alive after faking his death? How would the story have played out differently without Trevor's unhinged chaos causing mayhem throughout Los Santos? Trevor's introduction about a third of the way through the main storyline is honestly one of the most shocking, balls-to-the-wall moments in gaming history. This guy is completely off his rocker from the very beginning, beating a guy to death and ripping out his tooth as a souvenir. It sets the tone that Trevor is not someone to be messed with. Despite his psychopathic tendencies, Trevor ends up being a surprisingly loyal friend to Michael once their paths reconnect after years apart. He may be crass, vulgar, and prone to self-destructive outbursts, but there's a twisted charm and sense of honor that makes Trevor strangely endearing. Trevor's involvement propels a ton of the game's most memorable missions and heists. From orchestrating an elaborate train heist in the desert to squaring off against government agents, his savage antics keep players perpetually on edge, wondering how far he'll go. So what if Michael's secret never came to light, and his reunion with Trevor never happened? For starters, a huge chunk of the chaos and explosive mayhem would be erased from the story. No twisted trailer park meth empire to deal with. No psychotic rivalries with other criminal outfits. Michael's family could potentially stay under the radar without Trevor's unhinged rampages attracting unwanted attention from the FIB and other nefarious forces circling. Then again, maybe Michael would have been better off with Trevor backing him up during the big score heists. Having a loose cannon like that on your team could be an advantage despite all the collateral damage. Of course, we'd lose out on all of the amazing character moments and darkly comedic scenarios that come from their dysfunctional partnership. No burying bodies in the desert. No kidnapping high-profile targets to Staten Island. The way I see it, yes. It was essentially inevitable that Trevor would find out the truth about Michael faking his death one way or another. Even if the jewelry store job didn't directly cross their paths, Michael's dealings with the FIB and the escalating criminal chaos in Los Santos would have put him squarely on Trevor's radar. Remember, while the jewelry heist is what initially brought Michael and Trevor back together, it wasn't a complete coincidence. Agent Dave Norton was already keeping tabs on Michael and trying to pull him back into service as an informant for the FIB. With or without that particular score, Michael's past was going to catch up to him. And wherever Michael goes, Trevor Phillips seems cosmically destined to get roped into the madness sooner or later. Their friendship is more like two crash test dummies perpetually hurtling towards each other no matter which direction they veer. Once the FIB got the newly retired Michael involved in their underground operations again, it was only a matter of time before news of his big heist exploits started making waves on the streets. You know, rumors, ins and whispers travel fast in Trevor's circles. Can you imagine how Trevor would react first catching wind that his former partner, the guy he mourned and went on a massive grief-fueled rampage over, was potentially still alive and stabbing him in the back this whole time? He would have absolutely obsessed over sniffing out the truth. Any hints of Michael's unique Midwestern vocal cadence or mannerisms would have his spidey senses tingling from Blaine County. He would not rest until tracking down the source, using all his underworld connections to locate the wealthy Michael Townley living in Los Santos under an assumed name. And once Trevor confirmed his partner had returned from the grave, tried to go straight, and hadn't bothered to cut him in, well, that betrayal wouldn't go unanswered. Michael could run, but he'd never be able to hide from Trevor forever. That's the beauty of their relationship dynamic. They're two wildly differing energies, constantly out of sync and causing catalytic reactions whenever they collide. With Trevor's dogged obsession, it was predestined to reach a confrontation. Dave and the FIB likely saw Michael's off-the-books work as a means to an end, a way to temporarily exploit his skills before removing him as a threat. But they were sorely underestimating Trevor's chaotic inertia and the gravitational pull he has on Michael's life, no matter how much distance or deception gets put between them. Michael being Michael would eventually trip an alarm that called Trevor's locational services to converge. From there, it's a powder keg just waiting for the spark to ignite their latest round of shenanigans and destructions. So while the jewelry store kickstarted that inevitable reunion, the threads were already being tugged in that direction before the fateful heist. With government interests reactivating Michael's former criminal contacts, and Trevor's pathological need to unravel the deception of his friend's staged death, those two juggernauts were on an inescapable collision course. The jewelry store may have expedited the process, but there's no way Trevor was going to let the shocking reality of Michael's continued existence stay buried forever. He would have sniffed it out through Michael's latest exploits, and their cosmic bond of chaos would have magnetically drawn them back into each other's orbits of mutually assured mayhem yet again. But what would have happened to Michael eventually without Trevor? I don't think Michael's ultimate fate would have changed too much if Trevor never resurfaced, to be honest. He was already knee-deep in being pulled back into the criminal life by Agent Dave Norton and the FIB crew, whether he liked it or not. They were basically strong-arming him into doing these ill-advised jobs and playing snitch, threatening to blow up his peaceful suburban existence if he refused to cooperate. So from the jump, Michael's family's safety and their whole cushy lifestyle were on shaky ground. He couldn't just walk away clean from Norton's demands without serious consequences raining down on him and his loved ones. This path was bound to cause major strain on his home life no matter how it played out. One more thing to note is without Trevor, I don't think Michael and Franklin had such success. Michael strikes me as a guy who's damn good at pulling off heists and big scores when he puts his mind to it. But he's also got this nagging guilt and sense that the criminal hustle isn't sustainable long-term, especially with a wife and kids in the picture. So much of his motivation seems to come from chasing that elusive one last big job unicorn to somehow make a clean getaway for good. Without Trevor constantly stirring the pot with his unhinged antics, maybe Michael could have played things a little smarter and lower key at first. With the much more level-headed Franklin riding shotgun instead of that psycho wild card, he might have been able to knock out a few of Norton's crucial jobs while keeping a lid on the chaos for a while. But Michael has this really dangerous tendency to let his ego and hubris override common sense when things are going well. He just can't help himself from going bigger and flashier even when discretion is advised. It's like his MO is to always self-sabotage and tempt fate with over-the-top ambition when simple stealth is called for. His drive for that one last big score blinds him every damn time. So even without Trevor raining mayhem down, I reckon Michael's own big mouth and habit of biting off more than he can chew would have screwed him eventually. He would have attempted some absurdly ambitious final heist that painted a huge target on his back from rival crews, pissed off unstable benefactors like Steve Haynes, you name it. With double-crossing federal agents and angry mobsters all closing in thanks to his own excessive antics, the net was always going to tighten around him. Maybe Franklin finally wises up and cuts ties when the situation starts spiraling out of control. Then Michael's hubris and ego leave him totally alone to deal with the oncoming shitstorm of chaos stemming from his perpetual need to overcompensate and showboat. Or perhaps the mounting pressure of trying to juggle this unsustainable criminal double life finally does blow up his family situation. With no moral anchors or self-preservation impulses left after that, Michael just plunges deeper and deeper into a nihilistic rabbit hole of increasingly self-destructive gambles until everything combusts in flames. Whichever way you slice it, Michael's man-in-the-mirror suburban nightmare was always destined to come crashing down hard once Norton and company decreed he'd be their gunman again. He repeatedly demonstrates he can't resist going back to his criminal through-line, even when the stakes of protecting his family's security are highest. As much as he lies to himself, the outlaw hustle is his first love that he'll always relapse into chasing. Trevor's specific brand of unhinged anarchy undoubtedly expedited the tornado of mayhem. Michael's core obsessions and flaws were going to attract that level of karmic combustion with or without his old partner there to spark the fuse. This dude was a ticking time bomb destined to indulge his appetite for ostentatious criminal ambition one last time, blowing up his manufactured delusions of outrunning that life in an inevitably grandiose blaze of self-glorifying violence. Trevor's involvement was absolutely crucial for Michael and Franklin succeeding on a lot of their bigger heists and missions. That unhinged wildcard energy that Trevor brings may be chaotic and unpredictable, but it also gave them a massive edge that can't be understated. I think one of the biggest X factors Trevor provided was his utter fearlessness and willingness to go to the most extreme lengths with zero hesitation. Michael and Franklin, for all their criminal bravado, still had certain lines they might not cross or fears that could handicap them in ultra-high-stakes scenarios. Not Trevor, though. He was a frothing Rottweiler completely unrestrained by moral limits. Like, remember that crazy shootout leaving the Polito Bank after pulling one of the most audacious heists in LS? Dude had zero compunctions about flattening anything in his path, giving them the window to make that crazy escape possible. No boundaries, just unmitigated chaos. That maniacal edge meant Trevor could also be the ultimate wildcard X factor to throw curveballs their enemies would never see coming. He was particularly clutch when they needed to throw distractions or pull off intricate misdirects where precise bedlam was required. His total lack of impulse control somehow made him incredibly calculating when it came to improvised pandemonium. I'm thinking about jobs like pulling off that incredibly elaborate sting operation against Steve Haynes' corrupt federal kill squad at the farm. There's just no way they accomplish all those intricately timed maneuvers and keep the rug pulls going without Trevor's talent for sowing highly calibrated discord and confusion. Dude was like a savant of planned anarchy. Or what about when they realized the big score had been compromised and needed to completely change up the escape plan mid-heist? Trevor was key to audibilizing that totally improvised escape route that somehow still worked despite all the moving parts. His chaotic brain just seemed hardwired to think multiple parallel insanities ahead in those high-pressure, nihilistic scenarios. And of course, Trevor's skills as a career criminal with expertise in all aspects of the underworld's seediest industries gave him practical insights the others couldn't match. His intricate knowledge of munitions manufacturing, human trafficking networks, drug smuggling, that deep field experience was invaluable on so many jobs where hyper-specific underworld intel was required. Plus, having Trevor as part of the crew meant they could seemingly bend the laws of physics and endure pretty much any situation through sheer blunt force mayhem. Dude was incredibly durable and seemed to be powered by an intoxicating mixture of hillbilly meth-grade anarchy and plain old dumb luck. So he could strong-arm them through obstacles that would have been dead ends for Michael and Franklin alone. At the end of the day, Dude was just a human cheat code that bypassed a lot of limitations and conventional roadblocks they would have hit without his involvement. As much of a liability as his brand of havoc could be, Trevor's pathological lack of fear, self-preservation, or moral constraints opened up possibilities for Michael and Frank that simply wouldn't have existed otherwise. Were there definitely easier routes and potentially cleaner escapes if he wasn't part of the equation? For sure. But they also likely wouldn't have had remotely the same level of success breaching certain higher echelon underworld sectors and ultra-high-stakes jobs without that X-factor of Trevor's utterly uncontainable anarchic genius fueling their most blasted missions from start to finish. So while a calmer approach may have kept things a tad lower profile, Michael and Franklin's ambitions would have definitely been capped without Trevor's chaotic talents to realize their wildest heist fantasies in all their excessive, overblown glory. Dude was the ultimate clutch enabler for pulling off their most deliriously intricate scores, both a secret weapon and a secret chaos agent, often in the very same incendiary breath. All of this can't be avoided. What do you think would have happened without Trevor? Comment down, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks, I'll see you in the next video.